Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Alaska.
Mr. President, I listened to some of the remarks from my colleague from Maine. I appreciate so much of what he has said, the reminder to us all to be acting in good faith here. And I'd like to just take a few moments this morning to just say, count me in. Count me in to be operating in good faith. Count me in as one of the many in this body and the many around this country who want to ensure that we have strong borders in this nation, that we have true and meaningful border security, whether it's at our southern border or whether it's at our northern borders, whether it's our borders on land or whether it is our borders on sea. Count me in as one who is prepared to deal with the difficulties, the true humanitarian issues that we are seeing on the southern border today, with an influx of children and families, those who are seeking asylum, those who are frustrated with our systems. Count me in as one of those who wants to address these issues. But also count me in as one who says that shutting down the government is not governing. Nobody is winning in this. And I've been reading all the accounts that are out there in terms of whether people think that this is on the president, whether this is on the Democrats, whether this is on the House. You know who it's on, Mr. President? It is on the backs of all of us, of the men and women who are the federal workers, who work hard, who get up every day doing the job that we've tasked them to do, some of whom are furloughed, some of whom are working without pay, but all of whom are worried about where we are. We're now the longest shutdown that we have seen. I think it's either today or tomorrow that we pass that benchmark there. And it's not just those that are federal workers that are being impacted. It is those of us who rely on the services of those who work in our agencies. I come from a state, as does my colleague from Maine, where fisheries are a significant issue for us. Well, NOAA, NIMS, some of these other agencies have a great deal to do with the economic health and well-being of our state right now. This is our big crabbing season. This is the time of year where there's a lot of folks out there on the water that need to be able to provide for their families, their livelihood. And you think it's all about looking for the crab at the bottom of the Bering Sea. Well, in order to do that, you not only have to have certain permits, you have to have the ability to unload your load at the dock with certified scales. Not necessarily in the crab fisheries, but in other fisheries, you have to have observers on your boats. Well, one of the things that we're learning is the observers need to be checked out after their trip. They have to be checked out before they can move to another vessel. Well, you've got kind of a ripple effect that is going on out there. So whether you are a cod fisherman or a crab fisherman and you're thinking, government shutdown doesn't mean anything to me, it does until it doesn't, or it doesn't until it does. Our reality is that there is impact, and I understand that it impacts us in many, many different ways. Every morning I check in with the folks that are answering my phones here in Washington, D.C., along with staff back in Alaska. I'm saying, what are we hearing from folks back home? And I'll tell you, I've got a lot of people that are saying, Lisa, you got to stand with the president. You got to stand strong on this because we need to have border security. And then I have an equal number that are saying, please, please do something to help reopen this government. We expect it of you. We need it from you. We are begging you to make things work. Fix it back there. And so I think about where we are right here and right now. And there have been some suggestions out there that we don't know how long this is going to take, but we just got to hunker down, and you're just going to have to figure out how you can make ends meet. And we've got some great credit unions in the state of Alaska that have put out notices that have said, hey, you're concerned about how you're going to make that mortgage, make that car payment, pay your landlord, come to us and talk to us. And I so appreciate that. But I also know that many times that is limited in its application. And so this suggestion that I've heard by some that, well, you can just go out there and get a second job. I come from the state where we've got the highest unemployment rate in the country right now, or maybe we're now just second from the bottom. But you're in communities where you don't have a lot of options. Our Coast Guard base in Kodiak is the pride and joy for the Coast Guard. We've got a lot of coasties that service us in Alaska, about 2,500, and that's significant for us. But in the community of Kodiak, if the military spouse, if the Coast Guard spouse says, I've got to go find a job because my husband isn't getting paid and we're not quite sure when it's going to come, in Kodiak it's pretty dang tough to go find a temporary job. One of the things that we've learned is that got a situation, okay, Coast Guard are required to be showing up, and we so appreciate that. We so appreciate the work of the Coast Guard. They're out there in the Bering Sea right now. They're helping those that are dealing with some pretty extreme conditions, and every day they're putting their life on the lines for us. And so the fact that they are not protected at this point in time causes me great concern and anxiety and stress, as it does them as well. But think about it. You've got a situation where your non-exempted employees are those that are providing childcare at the child care center. So you still are going to work, but you're not getting paid, but your child care center is now not open. Think about these real life implications, applications. And then think about the very easy answer. Well, go out and find something to tide you through. And so I asked my team back here, I was like, well, wait a minute. You could go out and you could drive Uber. Well, if you're a federal employee, you can have secondary employment. But in order to ensure that there's no conflict with your federal job, you have to get permission to do so. So if you're in the middle of a shutdown, where do you go? And it's your department that's shut down. Where do you go for permission to get that secondary job? Where do you go for permission to say, hey, I want to drive Uber for the next however many weeks until the government is now open? There's nobody there to give the approval. So it's things like this where we can say back here in the halls of Congress, just hang tough, just be strong, just talk to your landlords. We're all going to get through this together. We want border security. I want border security. I think that the president's request for a comprehensive view of how we address this is not something so unreasonable. Let's figure that out. Let's walk through it. I was part of a group this week that was suggesting let's take that proposal that the acting OMB director sent to the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Let's treat that as a request for supplemental appropriations. Let's have that hearing. But in order to do this, we've got to get our colleagues on the other side to sit down and go through this process with us. So maybe we can get a short-term reprieve. Let's do a short-term CR to allow us to process this. But let's not keep the government shut down while we do this. We can figure these things out. Everyone's talking about leverage. It's all political leverage. Well, tell that to the people who are really worried right now. We had a pretty tough earthquake November 30th. that a lot of folks are still digging out of, that are writing checks to contractors because they need to make sure that they're going to have a boiler to get through a cold winter, or make sure that the foundation in the home that they want to get back into, that they're going to be able to get back into it sooner than later. But what do you do if you're not sure if that paycheck that was supposed to come today is coming today or coming 2 weeks from now? And you've written the check to the contractor. There's a lot of anxiety out there. And so I hear from them, a lot of these folks that are dealing with unexpected household expenditures after that earthquake, and I shouldn't say it's just after that earthquake. We just had another one yesterday, 4.2, I'm told. 4.7 yesterday. This is the fourth earthquake that we've had since the first of this year, January 1st, that has exceeded 4.0. So we had the big one, and then we've had thousands afterwards. So we're still dealing with a lot of this stuff. And so when people hear that the request for FEMA assistance or for small business assistance may be delayed because the government's not open, think about how we're compounding their stress, their anxiety. So I have been part of groups that have talked to the vice president, has talked to his negotiating team. I've raised these issues myself with the president. I want to be part of this solution, and I want to be part of this solution sooner than later, because we owe it to the people of this country to function. To function. And when the government is shut down, partial or otherwise, we're not functioning. So let's stop talking about who has leverage and who doesn't have leverage, and when that's going to tip to advantage the other side. Let's do what we need to do when it comes to ensuring the security of our nation and our borders. Let's navigate those issues, but let's not hold hostage good men and women who are working hard to keep us safe every day through the basic functions of government. I'm one who has signed on, I think, to most of the bills that are out there that would help alleviate some of what individuals and their families are seeing, whether it's Pay Our Coast Guard Act, the End the Government Shutdown Act, the Pay Accepted Personnel Act. But you know what? Those are simply Band-Aids, and quite honestly, they're probably nothing more than messages right now. But what I'm hearing from folks is keep us secure, protect our borders, deal with humanitarian issues, but allow our government to function. Go to work, stop arguing about who's winning, and let's get the government open. So, Mr. President, with that, I yield the floor. I don't yield the floor, excuse me. I would